Hello everyone and welcome to today's session. And today we'll be discussing the theory related to the chapter Human Health and Diseases. This is the part 5 of the lecture, and in today's session we'll be discussing NCERT section 7.1. So this is the disclaimer. Okay, so let's talk about the objectives of today's session. The first objective is to understand why it's important to categorize different types of drugs based on their effects. Now, next objective is to distinguish between opioids, cannabinoids, cocaine, and other substances. So these, you can say, drugs can be grouped into stimulants, depressant, as well as hallucinogens. So we'll talk about the difference between these different kind of drugs. Then we'll also talk about the classification of drugs as stimulants, depressant, or hallucinogen, and which family it belongs to. Clear? So these are the objective of today's session. So today we'll be talking about drugs and alcohol abuse, which is NCERT section 7.5. Then we'll summarize this entire session. We'll also discuss some NCERT-based questions which are related to these topics. Okay, then there'll be some keynotes that will help you memorize these topics. In the end, there'll be some interesting questions. So these questions will enhance your critical thinking ability. So they will challenge you to think outside the box. Okay, so you have to critically analyze these questions. Let's start with today's session. So first we'll be talking about the opioids. So opioids, these are the group of drugs that affect our nervous system. Now, opioids are important to understand because they have both medical uses and potential for abuse as well. Okay, now let's examine in detail how opioids bind to their receptors. Now, when opioids attach to these receptors in the central nervous system and gastrointestinal tract, they can block pain signals and create feelings of pleasure. This is why they are used medically for pain relief, but also why they can be so addictive. Now, heroin, this is an example of opioid. Heroin is also known as smack. This is the key example of opioid. Now, heroin's chemical name is diacetyl morphine. This means it's the modified form of morphine, which makes it act faster and more intensely in the body. So we are adding acetyl group, okay, diacetyl group in the morphine, and then it becomes heroin. Here, the acetylation of morphine gives you heroin. Now, let's take a look at the description. So, heroin is a white, odorless, bitter crystalline compound. This physical form makes it easy to transport and use illegally, which contributes to its widespread abuse. So, here you can see this in this image, chemical structure of morphine. So, you have seen this heroin is derived from morphine. Acetylation of morphine gives you heroin, and here you can see this is the opium plant from which morphine is obtained. Let's move on to the next slide. So here let's see what is the source of heroin. So it is obtained by acetylation of morphine. So morphine is chemically modified to produce this opioid. Clear? Now you can see this morphine is extracted from the latex of poppy plant, which is known as Papaver somniferum. This is the scientific name of the poppy plant. Here you can see What is the mode of intake of this opioid? So by snorting or injection, the person can, you can say, consume this opioid. Now, what are the effects? The effects are that your breathing rate will slow, drowsiness, and there'll be sign of depression here, and the body function slows down. Again, in this image, you can see chemical structure of morphine and the plant opium poppy. Let's talk about the next category called as cannabinoids. So cannabinoids, these are the substances that affect our bodies in interesting ways. Now let's talk about the receptors. So cannabinoid receptors are principally present in the brain. This means cannabinoids have a direct impact on brain function, influencing things like mood, memory, and perception. Now, the source of cannabinoids is the inflorescence of cannabis sativa. These flower clusters are rich in active compounds, making them the primary part of the plant used for extraction. Okay. Cannabinoids are obtained from the inflorescence of the plant cannabis sativa. What do you mean by inflorescence? So in simple word, inflorescence is, you can say, a cluster of the flowers. Now, the flower tops, leaves, and raisins are used to produce marijuana, hashish, charas, and ganja. Each product has unique properties based on which part of the plant is used and how it's processed. Okay, so here you can see these drugs or each of this product has unique properties. Okay, and this unique property is based on from which part of the plant it is being made and how it is being processed. Now, cannabinoids can be taken into the body by inhalation or oral ingestion. This means people either smoke or eat products containing these compounds, leading to different effects in absorption rates. And the main effect of cannabinoids is on the cardiovascular system. They can alter heart rate and blood pressure, which is why their use needs to be monitored, especially in people with heart conditions. Here in this image, you can see structure of cannabinoid and the cannabis sativa plant. Okay, from this plant, cannabis sativa, cannabinoids are obtained. Now let's talk about the coca alkaloids. Okay, specifically we'll talk about the cocaine, and we'll also talk about how these alkaloids, coca alkaloids, they affect human health. Okay, so now cocaine is obtained from the coca plant Erythroxylum coca, which is native to South America. Now this plant is the natural source of the drug, and understanding its origin help us see how substances from nature can be misused. This is also being misused or abused. This is the natural product actually. Now let's focus on the mechanism. Now, cocaine interferes with the transport of the neurotransmitter dopamine. So this means it blocks the normal recycling of the dopamine, causing it to build up and overstimulate the brain reward system. Okay, the dopamine, this is a neurotransmitter. Okay, basically what does dopamine do? Dopamine, this is a chemical messenger that transmits signals from one nerve cell to another nerve cell, or it transmits signals between the nerve cells. Now, what does cocaine do? Cocaine blocks the uptake of dopamine, okay, from the synaptic cleft. Now, with more dopamine available in synapse, It continues to stimulate the receiving neuron, resulting in increased feeling of pleasure and energy. So it is overstimulating the neurons. Okay. Now, cocaine is commonly known as coke or crack. Okay. Here in this image, you can see the Ecthrosylum coca plant from which the cocaine is obtained. Okay, let's continue discussion about the coca alkaloid, specifically cocaine. So cocaine, as we know now, it is a well-known drug that affects the nervous system. Again, what is the mode of intake? So it is usually snorted, which means the powder is inhaled through the nose. So this method allows the drug to quickly reach the brain, leading to rapid effects. Now let's focus on the effects of cocaine. So cocaine acts as a potent stimulant on the central nervous system, causing a strong sense of euphoria and increased energy. However, taking too much can lead to hallucinations, where the brain creates false perceptions. Now, other hallucinogens are obtained from plants like Atropa, Belladonna, and Datura. From these plants, also hallucinogens are obtained. So they cause hallucinations, means the brain will create false perception. In this image, you can see the flowering branch of the Datura plant. So here you can see these drugs, these are basically obtained from the angiosperms, which are the flowering plants. Okay, now let's talk about the tobacco. So tobacco is a substance many people encounter in daily life. Okay, now let's talk about the tobacco. So tobacco comes from a plant and has been used for humans over 400 years. So this long history shows how cultural practices can influence health behaviors. Now, tobacco can be smoked, chewed, or used as a snuff. Each method introduces nicotine into the body in a different way, but all can lead to health problems. The main active alkaloid in tobacco is nicotine, and nicotine acts on the nervous system, making tobacco both addictive and harmful. Let's have a look at the mechanism of tobacco and how it affects our bodies. Okay. Now, nicotine stimulates the adrenal gland to release adrenaline and noradrenaline into the blood. This is like pressing the body's go button, making the heart beat faster and preparing us for action. Now, nicotine binds to nicotine acetylcholine receptors in the brain, causing the release of dopamine and other neurotransmitters. This is what creates the feeling of pleasure and reward, and is a big reason why tobacco is so addictive. Okay, let's talk about the effects of tobacco on human health. So, tobacco use is a major risk factor for many diseases, and understanding its impact helps us make informed choices. Now, tobacco use raises blood pressure and increases heart rate, putting extra strain on the cardiovascular system. So this is one of the first and most immediate effects of the tobacco on the body. In addition, tobacco greatly increases the risk of several cancers, especially of the lung, urinary bladder, and throat, as well as diseases like bronchitis, emphysema, coronary heart disease, and gastric ulcers. These are serious, often life-threatening conditions. Smoking also increases the amount of carbon monoxide in the blood, which reduces the amount of oxygen that hemoglobin can carry. So this leads to oxygen deficiency in the body tissues, making it harder for organs to function properly. Now let's talk about some other drugs. Because these other drugs, they are different from the common drugs we hear about, and they have important roles in medicine. But they can also be misused. Examples are barbiturates, amphetamines, benzodiazepines, and lysergic acid diethylamide, known as LSD. They are normally used as medicines to help patients with mental illness like depression and insomnia, but are often abused as well. Okay, now let's talk about the adolescence and drug and alcohol abuse. Okay, let's first talk about the adolescence. So, this term describe a period of life from approximately 12 to 18 years and the process during which a child becomes an adult. This is known as adolescence. So adolescence is basically a phase during which a lot of changes are happening, and it is a kind of transition phase from adulthood, from the childhood to adulthood. Okay, so here the child becomes adult. So it is a transition phase, and a lot of changes are occurring. A lot of hormonal changes, physiological changes, morphological changes are occurring in the adolescence phase. So it's a bridge linking childhood and adulthood. Okay, and this is known as adolescence. Adolescence is a transitional stage of human development characterized by rapid biological change, cognitive, and psychological changes that occur as an individual grows from child into an adult. Let's talk about the vulnerability. Now, adolescence is widely recognized as the most vulnerable phase of mental and psychological development, typically spanning ages 12 to 18 due to significant biological and social changes. Now, curiosity is a fundamental desire to know and understand, while experimentation is the process of acting to discover and verify information, often driven by that curiosity. Yeah, so this, you can say, the individuals in the adolescence phase, they are very vulnerable. Okay, they are very curious. They want to experiment. So sometimes they indulge in wrong activities and they start taking drugs and alcohol. Okay. Now, these individuals in adolescence phase, they are always excited, they are always curious, and they want to experience adventure in life. Okay, they want to try new things, they want to explore new areas, they want to explore new things. So they might indulge in some wrong activities. Now, peer pressure is a significant factor and a major risk factor in driving drug and alcohol use, particularly among adolescents and young adults. Now, to escape from stress, depression, and frustration, people indulge in drug and alcohol abuse. The next one, again, if the family is unsupportive, this can also lead to drug and alcohol abuse. Okay, now let's talk about the addiction. What is addiction? So addiction is a complex issue that affects both the mind and the body. Okay, so what is addiction? Addiction involves a psychological attachment to certain effects such as euphoria. This means people become mentally connected to the pleasurable feelings these substances provide, making it hard to stop using them. Okay, now Addiction is often linked to a temporary feeling of well being, especially with drugs and alcohol. So it's like a quick escape from stress or the problems, but the relief doesn't last, leading people to seek it again and again. Another important aspect is that people may take these substances even when they are not needed. This shows how addiction overrides normal decision making, similar to how someone might keep eating snacks and even when they are full, but with much more serious consequences. Let's talk about the term dependence now. Now, what is dependence? The dependence is when the body starts to rely on the substance to function normally. So it's a physical need now, not just a mental one. Now, dependence is shown by the body's tendency to develop withdrawal symptoms if the regular dose of drugs or alcohol is suddenly stopped. Now, withdrawal syndrome is a set of unpleasant symptoms that occur when the body doesn't get what it's used to. Okay. Now, let's talk about the withdrawal syndrome. The withdrawal syndrome includes symptoms like anxiety, shakiness, nausea, and sweating. Now, these symptoms can be very severe and in some cases even life threatening. Okay. So, we have seen these withdrawal symptoms. They are characterized by anxiety, shakiness, nausea, and sweating, and can be severe and even life threatening. Clear? So, this was about addiction, dependence, and withdrawal syndrome. Now, let's talk about the effect of drug and alcohol abuse, which is a crucial topic in understanding human health and diseases. So, what are the immediate effects of drug and alcohol abuse? So, these are the first changes that can be seen soon after consumption, and they can be quite dramatic. One of the most noticeable immediate effect is recklessness behavior or reckless behavior, which can lead to vandalism and violence. Vandalism means destroying the public property. Okay, now let's move on to the long-term effects. So these are the problems that develop after repeated or prolonged use, and they can be much more serious and lasting. Long-term use can cause major health issues, especially damage to the nervous system and liver cirrhosis as well. Now, the nervous system is like the body's electrical wiring, and the liver is like a filter. When these are damaged, the whole system will suffer. Okay. Now, people who use intravenous drugs are at much higher risk of catching deadly infections like AIDS and hepatitis B. Sharing needles is extremely dangerous as it allows virus to enter directly into the bloodstream. Now, the social impact of substance abuse is also huge. It can cause mental and financial distress, not just for the person using the substance, but for their entire family and even the community. Okay, so these were the immediate and the long term effects of drug and alcohol abuse. Now, let's focus on the prevention and control strategies. Okay, so this section is about how we can actively reduce the risk of disease and support those around us. So, prevention is a key part of public health, and understanding these steps can help us protect ourselves and our communities. Now, one key way to prevent substance abuse is to avoid undue peer pressure. Education and counseling are essential in preventing and treating substance abuse. Seeking help from parents and peers is another important step. Okay, so peers are your friends. And parents, you can take help from the parents as well. Now, looking for danger signs in friends and family. So, this means being observant and noticing changes in the behavior, mood, or physical health of that child or the individual who is taking the drugs. Clear? So, this is how you can prevent and control the drug and the alcohol abuse. Next one. The next important step is seeking professional and medical help from qualified psychologists, psychiatrists, and joining de-addiction or rehabilitation programs if needed. Okay, now finally, let's remember the guiding principle: prevention is better than cure. So, this means it's always easier and more effective to stop a problem before it starts rather than try to fix it later. Okay, so today we discussed about drug and alcohol abuse. Now let's summarize the entire lecture. So common drug includes opioids from the poppy plant, okay, papaver somnifera, cannabinoids from cannabis sativa, cocaine from the cocoa plant, okay, here, and then there are some prescription medicines and tobacco products as well. So these are some of the common drugs. Now we also talked about the major causes of drug abuse. The major causes are curiosity, peer pressure, academic stress. Okay, there is the stress to excel in studies. Then media influence. Now in the television you can see the influential people, they are smoking. So there is a lot of media influence as well on the younger generation. Then sometimes there are some family issues, parents are not supportive. Okay, and the cool perception among the youth. The cool perception means they now the individual in the adolescence stage or the youth, they think that smoking or drinking is cool. So this cool perception is among the youth that is driving them to take drugs and alcohol. Now, we also talked about the physical effects of drug abuse. So these include problems with the respiratory and heart systems, as well as these drugs and alcohol, they can also damage the liver and they can cause liver cirrhosis, which is irreversible. Now, there are increased risk of disease like AIDS and hepatitis B as well. Okay, during, you can say, when the person is using intravenous injections. Okay, because these diseases, AIDS and hepatitis B, they can be spread through blood as well. Now, we also talk about that drug abuse can lead to behavioral changes. Yeah. So the person or the drug addict will show poor academic. Okay. That person will be depressed. It will show aggression, and there will be some relationship issues and alter sleeping and eating patterns as well. Okay. Now, prevention involves avoiding peer pressure, education, seeking help from parents and teachers, and monitoring the warning signs. Yeah. Now you can see professional medical help and rehabilitation programs are crucial for recovery. We also talk about the addiction. So addiction causes physiological dependence, meaning the person feels they can't cope up without these drugs, without these substances. Over time, their body gets used to it, needing more for the same effort. And if they stop, withdrawal symptoms can appear, like headache, anxiety, or even physical pain. Okay, now you can see here there are some social and financial problems that often emerge due to drug and alcohol abuse, sometimes lead to criminal behavior to support the behavior. Now you can see drug and alcohol abuse or addiction to these drugs can often lead to social and financial problems such as losing jobs or relationships. In some cases, people may even turn to crime to support their habit. Okay, now let's discuss some keynotes. Now, drug abuse involves excessive substance use leading to physical and psychological dependence. Now, opioids, which consist of morphine and heroin, these are obtained from the poppy plants and they provide pain relief but are highly addictive. Then cannabinoids such as marijuana, these substances can change how we perceive things, making the world seem different or distorted. Okay. So cannabinoids, they alter our perception and cause psychological dependence as well. Next, cocaine comes from the coca plant and is a very powerful stimulant. It causes intense feeling of euphoria or extreme happiness, but this high, you can say, or you can say these effects, they're short-lived. Now, alcohol, which is basically ethanol, this depresses the nervous system. This is a depressant of nervous system. It slows down the brain function. Over time, heavy drinking can damage the liver and make it hard to think clearly or make good decisions. Now let's discuss some NCERT based questions. So first question is, compare and contrast the mechanism of action between opioids and cocaine on the nervous system, and how do these differences explain their opposing effects on the body? So what will be the correct answer? So let's have a look at the answer. See, opioids bind to specific receptors in the central nervous system and gastrointestinal tract. This often makes them depressant, meaning they will slow down the body functions. Next is cocaine. It works differently. It interferes with the dopamine transport, which means it blocks the normal recycling of dopamine in the brain. So as a result, what happens? The level of dopamine increases in the synapses area and it keeps on stimulating the receiving neuron. Basically, it is stimulating the brain. Okay, that's why cocaine acts as a stimulant, increasing the neural activity. Now, opposing effects are due to opioid decrease neural transmission. This means they reduce the amount of signals being sent in the nervous system, leading to less pain and slower body functions. Then we talked about the cocaine. So cocaine, on the other hand, increases dopamine availability in the brain. So this leads to feeling of euphoria, increased energy. Here, now these different mechanisms explain why opioids produce sedation while cocaine produce stimulation. Okay, now next question. A patient shows symptoms of euphoria, increased energy, and hallucinations. The drug likely being abused interferes with dopamine transport. You have to identify this drug. Okay, so this type of problem is testing your understanding of how certain drugs affect the brain. Let's have a look at the answer. Okay, so the drug is cocaine, also known as coke or crack. It was obtained from the erythroxylum coca plant. Emphasize that this plant is native to South America and has a long history of use. But its purified form is highly addictive and dangerous. Now, let's talk about the cocaine. So, cocaine interferes with the transport of the dopamine, which is a neurotransmitter in the central nervous system. This means it blocks the reuptake of the dopamine, causing it to build up in the synapses. Okay, and this overstimulate the nerve cells. This overstimulation leads to feeling of euphoria and increased energy, which is why the people abuse this drug. Now, when someone takes excessive dose of cocaine, it can cause hallucination. This means the person may see or hear things that aren't real. Now, these are some interesting questions. You have to analyze these questions. Okay, you have to critically analyze them. First question is, analyze why adolescents are particularly vulnerable to drug abuse. If your answer connect psychological factors with specific physiological risk of drug abuse during this period. And next question, you have to discuss how nicotine's mechanism of action leads to both short-term stimulation and long-term health risk. Include specific physiological pathway in your answer. There. So, with this, we have discussed the theory. Now, let's discuss the DPP related to this topic. Let's begin with the first question. The question is, heroin is chemically known as. We have 4 options. You select the correct answer from these options. First option is diacetylmorphine. Second is morphine sulfate. Third is cocaine hydrochloride. And fourth is cannabidiol. What is the correct answer? Okay, here the correct answer is diacetylmorphine. Okay, heroin is obtained from acetylation of morphine. Next one, which neurotransmitter transport is interfered by cocaine? Options are serotonin, dopamine, acetylcholine, and GABA. So, what will be the correct answer? Here the correct answer will be dopamine. So, dopamine is a neurotransmitter. Okay, it transmits signals between the nerve cells. Now, what does cocaine do? Cocaine blocks the, you can say, reuptake of dopamine from the synaptic cleft. So, there is an increased concentration of dopamine in the synapses region, and this overstimulates the nerve cells. Okay, so that's why there is a feeling of, you can say, pleasure and increased energy. Next one, which of the following is a long-term effect of anabolic steroid misuse in females? Okay, what are the options? Reduced body hair, then deepening of voice, decreased aggressiveness, and enlarged ovaries. So, what will be the correct answer here? Cannabinoid steroids. So, they are being used by females. What will be the correct answer? Okay, so these anabolic steroids, they are structurally related to testosterone, which is a male hormone. Clear? That's why, what would be the correct answer here? What is the long-term effect of using this drug? The answer will be option number B, deepening of voice, because this anabolic steroids, they are testosterone-like. Okay, so deepening of voice, this is the kind of secondary sexual character in the males. So there will be deepening of voice. Next one, what is the primary reason for the statutory warning on cigarette packets? So the option are reduce production cost, to comply with international laws, to warn about health risks, and to discourage underage sales. What is the correct answer? Okay, here the correct answer will be to warn about health risks. So, tobacco, as we know, tobacco can cause cancer. It can cause mouth cancer, lung cancer. Yeah? So, this warning is to warn about the health risk. Next one, which plant is the source of cannabinoids? The options are Papaver somniferum, Cannabis sativa, Erythroxylum coca, and Datura stramonium. What is the correct answer? Okay, the correct answer will be Cannabis sativa. Cannabinoids are obtained from Cannabis sativa. Clear? So now we have discussed the DPP also. So all our answers are correct. So with this, we end this session. I hope this session was quite knowledgeable for you. We'll meet you in the next session. Thank you very much for listening.